going in, we didn't necessarily know what was going to be there, but we had, mood books or conceptual visions of what the experience they wanted to be in each of these anchor points. And they gave us creative license to be able to facilitate and implement those experiences.
Grab a seat at the table, put on your headphones, and get ready to be inspired by the stories, expertise, and innovative thinking of food service consultants. Welcome to the FCSI Project Showcase, the Art of Culinary Spaces. Let's make something great together.
I'm Ryan, and I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I currently live. I've been with Ricca Design Studios for 5 years, just actually hit that anniversary a couple weeks ago. I lived in New York City for 13 years, and I was up there with Ricca for about the past 5 years and just recently moved back home. We are a national and international food service design consultancies with all over the States and internationally. And internally, I'm our hospitality lead. I got my background working in restaurants, bars, any type of front of house, back of house application in New York City restaurants. And so that was naturally kind of the step that I fell into. It's also my passion in space. But as a firm, we consider ourselves interdisciplinary designers, and we work across all sectors. Wherever food is served to the public, we do it. The lead for this came from an operator. So we have a long-standing relationship with Fairmont as Ricca Design Studios for a very, very long time. And this started with a small project at the Hamilton Princess Resort in Hamilton, Bermuda. So we got brought onto a small renovation project in that location and made friends with the architect of record for that project, Botello Wood, based out of Bermuda. So at the time, the Hamilton Princess was changing hands of ownership. The owners, they purchased Hamilton Princess, and at the same time, they purchased the Sugar Beach Viceroy Resort simultaneously. And so as we worked on the Hamilton Princess project, that relationship was going smoothly. They invited us to be on the team for the Sugar Beach project, and that's essentially how we got introduced to that project. It started about 18 months after the initial project at the Hamilton Princess in Bermuda. So all of the facilitation was through the architect, didn't really have any type of relationship with the owner per se. It was all facilitated and directed through the architect, and the architect has a very close relationship with this owner and works on a lot of their different projects. So we were effectively reaching construction administration on the Hamilton Princess project, and my friend Jason, the principal architect on the project, reached out and said, "Hey, I think we've got another opportunity for you guys. Can you help us?" Yeah, we want to open tomorrow, basically. No. Effectively, it was really challenging because this is a remote location, the island of St. Lucia, and they have a very clear, distinct busy season and a very clear, distinct slow season. And the hotel could not afford to be shut at all during the busy season. And so we basically had to engage in design and get through to contract documentation, the entire bidding process, so that it would line up with the slow season for the resort. What ended up happening is it was a bit ambitious because there were, 4 or 5 different parcels or projects that we were working on simultaneously. It ended up being split into 3 different phases. And so the project actually commenced in 2019. We didn't complete all 3 phases until just last year, 2022. So it was rolling construction with documentation over the course of about 4 years. Well, designing to spec is really challenging in remote locations because you don't always have manufacturers to provide the voltages within the spaces or the locations that you're working in. So we, in a way, had to partner with dealers to get sort of, feedback on what manufacturers had available voltages within the lead times, or whether they made them at all, but within the lead times to be able to meet the project timeline. So we had to be very flexible with specifications and, be very vigilant to make sure that we weren't sacrificing the product for the owner, because this is a very high-end resort. So I would say that, making sure that we could design everything to spec in the way that we wanted to. Also, customs was really tricky with lead times. And then the third hardest thing was that part of the construction coincided with COVID-19, the pandemic. And getting to and from the island for myself for the CA trips was, it turned from, 1 6-hour flight to basically a 24 to 36-hour journey to get there through the intake process and everything. But the logistics, whenever you're working in a remote location like that, they just exponentially inflate in terms of difficulty. Opportunities and challenges. Effectively, the main restaurant, which was phase one of the project, is built on a structure that is raised it's built into sand, effectively. So we had to, the walls were penetrated, the entire facility was leaking and flooding before we got our hands on it. So they had to take out the entire slab, and we had to put in a brand new one that was work through drainage of, essentially the entire resort being built into a hillside, and it rains every single day there because of the humidity. So there were lots of different factors that informed that. But at the same time, they were looking to build new beaches. And so they were just bringing in sand and creating new beaches in locations that they wanted to. And so we had a lot of creativity. They would say, we want to add a bar in this location. And previously it was the sea. And now they're building it out. And we had the opportunity to create a new F&B opportunity. And that was sort of the entire approach with the project. Whenever the ownership took over from it, or took over the property, they just observed that there was really a lack of diverse amenities for the guests that were staying there. And so to be competitive, to meet the price point that they wanted to, they really wanted to elevate the offerings by adding more and different, give the guests different locations to be able to get the things that they need. So they were very open to creativity. We had a number of in-person design charrettes at the beginning, where we would go down there and we would just throw around different ideas. And there were entire concepts that we threw out: renovations of existing restaurants, looking at, converting back of house kitchens into front of house spaces or opening them up. In the end, we ended up meeting a compromise. I'd say the biggest addition that was not there previously was we turned a retail storefront into a very successful gelato and coffee cafe. Previously, they didn't have anything like that for the guests. So guests in the morning that maybe just didn't want to sit down at the buffet in the morning and just wanted to grab something quick to get down to the beach, they didn't have that. They had to sit down. So offering sort of that quick service, QSR, grab and go type environment really, really helped them with guest ratings. And then down at the beach, previously there was just a restaurant, but there wasn't a bar. And so we added a bar down there. And I think we added 2 other bars to the project as well. And that really, opened up the sort of the liveliness and the hangout sort of feelings, the different locations on the resort. Well, in these remote locations, everything shuts down a lot earlier. So dinner is at 6:00, and by 8:00, it's not lights out, but there's really not much that's happening in locations, except maybe down by the beach where you have a pit grill or something like that's happening, a more active environment. So what we found was, in the main building, there was this terrace that was adjacent to the dining room for the sort of the fine dining dinner only restaurant, and it provided a really beautiful view of the sunset facing directly west towards the sun. And it was just an opportunity to do something there, because as it was really just a landing space, a destination between the stairs and the dining room, about 50 feet long, where there was really nothing happening. There were chairs, there were couches and so forth for people to sit in, but it wasn't really being utilized because there wasn't any sort of anchor or F&B reason for them to hang out in this location. If they wanted anything, they had to leave, go to another bar, and then come back, or they had to sit down in the dinner restaurant, which again was fine dining, linen style, a much longer sort of service. Putting the bar here, it created this sort of piano lounge type of environment. And on a regular basis, I don't know if they do it every single night, but they do, like a 3-string band that plays there and does, like really quiet, relaxing jazz music. And they've got like very comfortable furniture around the entire area. And then with the bar, it has a totally different menu of drinks than it does all the way down at the beach, which is much more tropical in nature. The idea just being able to create some place for people to relax other than the beach, because when the sun sets on the beach, it's not really the most comfortable place to be hanging out in the lounge. A lot of people go back to their rooms, whenever after they've spent all afternoon baking in the sun, they go back, they shower, they get into their evening dress, and sometimes they just want a place to kick back and hang out. And this provided them a really beautiful opportunity to watch the sunset, to enjoy a little bit of music, and maybe a little more refined cocktail, sort of like an interstitial experience space between the end of day beach experience before they head off to dinner. I have to give kudos to, Botella Wood and the ownership team, because they had a very strong vision for the different types of experiences that they wanted. And so going in, we didn't necessarily know what was going to be there, but we had, mood books or conceptual visions of what the experience they wanted to be in each of these anchor points. And they gave us creative license to be able to facilitate and implement those experiences. As commercial kitchens shrink in size and spaces are pinched, this is a really good example. We had an existing footprint. To even expand on the footprint within, say, 5% or 10% would have required a whole different set of permitting. They would have had to update the entire structure, put on a new roof. And so there was no flexibility. We had to work within the footprint, but the program was obviously growing. They wanted to increase the in-room dining experience. They wanted to increase the menu. They wanted to add the bar onto the side of it, and there was previously no service bar. So we had to relocate and add these additional programming components to a fixed footprint of, I think it was around 2,500 square feet. So, versatility becomes the name of the game. And we're fortunate in this year of 2023 with the different solutions that we have with, combi ovens and automation and all of these different things, basically set it, forget it in a commercial setting. But we put a range suite in there, and it was really important for such a fixed, expensive, permanent piece of equipment to be versatile and to have cooking equipment that could accommodate the menu that they were looking at with launch, but also be there and be, convenient and usable for any type of changes to the menu in the future. So it was a real strategy with the equipment that we specified, layout of the space, looking at multiple different service points or exits and entrances into the kitchen. The kitchen had an entrance, it had a vestibule that led into the dining room. The opposite side of that corridor led into a back of house service road where there were carts so that they could then load off, in-room dining. We really didn't have much of a space to do in-room dining. And so it kind of comes off of the main chef's counter as well in the restaurant. So getting just really creative with stations and very specific with what happens in each of these stations and just making the equipment, readily available and flexible within those, it was really, really important. And so I would say that really summarizes the idea. Think of a Swiss Army knife. It's got a fixed footprint, but it's got 10 different purposes. That's really the approach that I try to take with any project. Again, kitchens aren't getting any bigger as real estate costs get more expensive. And so that's our job. My job is to be more effective and efficient in planning as programs grow and spaces shrink. Well, we did, but not really with the reps, with the dealer. So effectively, we worked side by side. We brought in a kitchen equipment contractor effectively while we were building a design development set. And so as we were laying out the space, selecting makes, models, manufacturers, all of that, we would at check set 50% DD, we would send that off to the dealer and ask them to look into lead times, look into the voltages to confirm all that information. And then they would be reaching out on their side, get back to us with feedback. So it wasn't any type of formal, partnership, but we were helping each other along effectively to make sure that whenever we got to a point where we started to do CDs, we knew that everything in that schedule was going to be available and we had the voltages available. So we had to make, switches between 50% and 100% DD with refrigeration. Like for instance, I think we previously had Continental and we had to go with Williams, because we found out that there was a lead time issue with components to get the voltage that they needed. Not that they didn't have it, that they couldn't specify it, but there was a component shortage, which we saw in 2020. Consider that, it was an informal agreement. It's a handshake agreement, and the dealer has to work in good faith, or they could put all this work in putting together the shop drawings, the schedule, and at the end of the day, the owner might choose to go out to bid and go with a different KEC dealer, and all that work is for nothing. So it really is a leap of faith on both sides. We still have the advantage or the leverage in this situation because we are on the project and we are extending an opportunity for them early and saying, look, if you can do this, engage with us in this sort of collaborative way, this could work out in your favor at the end of the day. I look around at my constituents and I'm relatively young and green within the space. I mean, I've only been a consultant with Ricca for 5 years. I mean, that's the extent of my consulting experience. So to have a project selected, last year or within 3 or 4 years, something that was one of the first projects that I designed with the firm, it's very affirming and validating, and it means a lot to me. And I have seen the small world that we live in the FCSI community, and how important it is to have good relationships and how supportive everyone is around you in the group. So, to have that sort of be shared in my space among my constituents and professionals, it has been really great and really satisfying, and I take a lot of great pride in it. I'm very active on LinkedIn with my personal professional page there. Also, our website is quite simple, ricca.com, RICCA.com. We all have background pages on there, so you can go over to my page and check out, there's some interesting tidbits about myself and others, the entire leadership of Ricca. And yeah, if you ever see me at a conference, I've got a QR code instead of a business card these days, and you can scan that and it pulls up a whole profile of information on me in that way.